Alright guys, I'm going to show you how to set up a chain. The chain I chose to use today will be it'll be harvesting microorganisms and converting that to bacteria, which is something that we're going to need to make our product, our P4 product for our outposts. Now it's time for me to find a planet. I need to find a planet where I can harvest microorganisms because that's what you need to make bacteria. I just happened to find a decent planet in Ahala that has a high level of microorganisms. How did I get to this page though? Well, you actually right click on the planet of choice that you're going to try to see and you hit view in planet mode, and I happen to be on this planet right here. You're going to go ahead and hit the scan, and once you hit that button, you can go ahead and select whatever filter you'd like. Now, of course, since we're looking for microorganisms, I'm going to leave it on the microorganisms filter. What that does is it changes the color of the surface of the planet to be following this scale here. So the left colors would be no microorganisms, and red to white would be really high levels of microorganisms. Now, since I'm in high sec, I'm going to have pretty low to moderate levels. What I've found here is that this is probably the best it's going to get on this planet because there are no really big hotspots. And with microorganisms on a temperate planet, which is similar to Earth, there's going to be a lot of microorganisms. So I'm going to go ahead and set up shop right here. Once you've found your hotspot, you're going to want to place your command center. Now, I wouldn't recommend starting off with anything lower than an advanced command center, which does require some training and several days, but it is definitely worth it because they have more resources like CPU and power grid, which means you can put more harvesters and reactors down, which is going to be a big deal later on. So to do so, now that I found my hotspot, I'm going to go ahead and hit build. And first thing, before you can build anything else, you have to place a command center, which you actually have to have in your cargo hold when you're in space. So here's my advanced temperate command center. I'm on the build selection screen. You click command centers, and here's the only one that I can place, which happens to be the correct one. Now once you click that, you're now able to place it wherever you want. Well, I think I'm going to use this area right here because it looks good to me. Now, your command center is not going to be connected to anything, actually, the way we're setting this up. So I'm going to go ahead and place it on the edge so it doesn't waste any of my hotspot. I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. Now these extra fields open up. Now that your other categories here are opened, you can go ahead and open your spaceports because that's the next thing you're going to want to place. Your spaceport is actually going to be what we use for both storage and launching the materials off of the planet. The reason we're going to use it for storage is it's actually going to hold more per unit of CPU and power usage as any other type of storage. So what you're going to want to do is place this in the very center of where you plan to be harvesting, because all of your extractors will be as close to that surrounding it as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and find a good spot here. Let's say right there. You can drag, it's pretty easy to use. The user interface is pretty self-explanatory, it's user-friendly. So now that I have my launch pad in the very center there, I can go ahead and start placing my extractors. Now, this planet type has more than one material on it. The material I want to use are microorganisms. That's what I'm going to be extracting today. So now that I have my spaceport, which is the central location of my operations here, I can place my microorganism extractors. Now, just to be clear, you do not have to have these in your cargo. They just are actually set up on the planet. You don't have to buy them separately. They just cost ISK once you hit the submit button. So what I want to do here actually is make this all clear so that there's nothing in my way, and I'm going to try to place these as close to this as possible. Now see how it's red? Obviously I can't place it there. Once it turns gray, that's where you want to place it. So I'm going to set one up and set another up, and I'm going to go ahead and set up a couple of these. Now here is the only tricky part. What you're going to have to do is balance the ratio of your extractors to your processors, which I will talk about later. The reason you need to do this, and no one can tell you how many you need, what ratio you need, is because each planet and where you place them, and dependent on many other factors, will change the rate that these extract. So if you can see here, you have to hit submit before you use them. I'm going to show you my deposits. You can click on any of your extractors and hit this button, and it will survey for deposits. Now you can select any of these types. So your cycle times are just the rate of time it takes to do one cycle. It's kind of like a cycle on a mining laser. Once that finishes, it spits out the materials to wherever you've routed them to go, which I will talk about routing later. But what I would say is more important at this time is the time to depletion. Time to depletion just means this is about how often you have to come back to start reharvesting by resurveying. So every 5 hours here, you'll need to log back in, go ahead and click on each command center again, and hit survey to find a new deposit. Once you've done that, and you can expect generally the same numbers at the rate we're going to be harvesting. Once you've done that, it will start going again. There's nothing else you have to do. The whole point is that this is how often you have to come back and check, so there's a limit. For this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and use the 5-hour cycle. Now, you don't have to come in every 5 hours. What you have to do is say, well, once this is up, once the 5 hours is up, it's going to stop harvesting. But if you're on maybe every 6 hours or maybe every 7 hours, you might still get more than the 23-hour cycle, because this is the amount you harvest per cycle, which is this time here. Here's your total throughout this whole 5-hour period, and here's the total for the 23-hour period. Using the 5-hour cycle here, I see that every 15 minutes I get 1,073 units of microorganisms. Now, what you have to figure out here is how many of these extractors you need to get really close to filling up an entire processor for each cycle. Now, a processor can use 3,000, it actually requires 3,000 units of your base material to do a reaction. And it takes a half hour for it to do the reaction. So you want 3,000 units being mined or harvested or extracted every half hour. Now, here we see that the cycle time is 15 minutes, and this is how many you get per cycle. So that's just over 2,000 per half hour. So 1.5 of these is plenty to fill up an entire processor cycle.